Countdown.
Tahniah. Siaran langsung ini dibawakan khas kepada anda oleh Akademi YouTuber Malaysia. Sebuah inisiatif e-didik Malaysia dan Kelab Guru Malaysia. Tumpukan perhatian anda. Siaran langsung akan bermula sebentar lagi. Link sijil akan diberikan di hujung siaran ini. Pastikan diisi dalam tempoh yang ditetapkan. Terima kasih.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera. Hai semua guru, ibu bapa yang dihormati dan para pelajar yang madam kasihi sekalian. Selamat datang ke Pusat Tuisyen YouTuber AYU, usaha sama e-didik Malaysia dan Kelab Guru Malaysia. Bermula percuma, selamanya percuma. Untuk mendapatkan keberkatan kelas kita pada malam ini, mari kita sama-sama mulakan kelas dengan membaca Ummul Kitab Al-Fatihah. Amin amin ya rabbal alamin. Okey, apa khabar para pelajar yang madam kasihi semua? Okey, harap semuanya berada dalam keadaan yang baik dan bersedia untuk meneruskan kelas kita pada malam ini. Okey, madam percaya pelajar-pelajar dah tak sabar lagi untuk mengikuti kelas kita kali ini. Okey, terlebih dahulu saya perkenalkan diri saya dahulu. Okey, nama madam Asmazatul Yusfiziati binti Muhammad Yusof atau nama panggilan Madam Fizi dari Kolej Matrikulasi Negeri Sembilan selaku moderator pada malam ini. So hari ini kita ada kelas tuition Perakaunan Matrikulasi kali ke-10. Okey, so pada malam ini kita bersiaran secara langsung dari channel Cikgu Yati. Okey, sesiapa yang masih belum subscribe, silalah tekan butang subscribe sebagai tanda sokongan. Untuk makluman pelajar semua, nama penuh beliau adalah Cikgu Nur Hayati binti Ismail dari Kolej Matrikulasi Negeri Sembilan. Beliau mempunyai pengalaman mengajar selama 26 tahun. Tajuk yang akan disampaikan oleh Cikgu Yati pada malam ini ialah topik 5 Manufacturing Overhead. Pelajar dan para penonton lain dialu-alukan untuk mempelajari topik berkenaan. Kelas kita ini akan berlangsung lebih kurang 1 jam. So, bersama madam di studio pada malam ini ialah Cikgu Nur Faiza Ahmad sebagai control host. Beliau adalah pensyarah biologi dari Kolej Matrikulasi Negeri Sembilan. Okey, dan seterusnya Cikgu Naini. Okey, hai Cikgu Naini. Beliau adalah guru biologi dari Pusat Tingkatan 6 SMK Sultan Sulaiman, Kuala Terengganu sebagai pemerhati. Okey, sebelum kita teruskan kelas kita, suka madam ingatkan semua pelajar dan penonton yang ingin menghantar komen agar menggunakan bahasa yang sopan dan gambar profil yang bersesuaian untuk tontonan umum. Sila on kamera dan mikrofon siap-siap jika anda terpilih untuk naik ke ruang studio untuk bersama dengan Cikgu Yati. So, sila fokus pada isi pelajaran yang akan disampaikan dan hanya menggunakan ruang chat untuk menjawab soalan atau jika ada soalan yang hendak diajukan. Dan pada akhir siaran ini, link e-sijil akan diberikan dan anda hanya ada 30 minit sahaja untuk mengisi maklumat. Sila pastikan anda hanya menggunakan email e-didik sahaja. So, madam percaya semua yang hadir kelas pada malam ini merupakan pelajar-pelajar cemerlang dan mari kita tunjukkan disiplin yang terbaik. Oleh itu, madam berharap agar semua memberi sepenuh tumpuan semasa kelas ini bersiaran. Baiklah, tanpa berlengah lagi, madam serahkan kelas ini kepada Cikgu Yati. Okey, Cikgu Yati dipersilakan.
Okey, terima kasih Madam Fizi, moderator untuk program malam ini. Okey, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera. Hello everyone and apa ya tadi saya sebut welcome back to my channel So saya ucapkan terima kasih kepada Madam Fizi as the moderator, Cikgu Faiza sebagai host controller and Cikgu Naini sebagai observer for tonight. Okay. So welcome back to my channel. Today I just want to explain about topic 5, manufacturing overhead. So before that, I just want to introduce myself. So this is my biodata. My name is Nurhaiti binti Ismail. You can call me Cikgu Yati. And I am the lecturer, accounting lecturer in the College Matrikulasi Negeri Sembilan. And my teaching experience is about 26 years, where 15 years in the school and 11 years in matriculation. So don't forget to visit my channel, Cikgu Yati channel. And this is my teammate because we are the collaboration between matriculation and also STPM. So this is my teammate for accounting and also economic. So the leader is Madam Fizi and another two is the economic lecturer and teacher Cikgu Lee and Cikgu Yi. And this is the mathematics team led by teacher Im and another teacher is teacher Aileen and teacher Zainaria. And this is the biology PRAYU and STPM and matriculation. So the leader is Cikgu Faiza and another members is Cikgu Fatihah, Cikgu Naini and Cikgu Wawam. And this is the chemistry PRAYU combination between STPM and matriculation, and the leader is Cikgu Shahnun. And this is the physics subject or physics team. The leader is Puan Rosmaya. Okay, don't forget to visit our portal Academy YouTuber, www.academyyoutuber.com. Okay, now I just want to start with topic 5, manufacturing overhead. So before that, you must know the objective or learning objective or outcome. First, you must know the concept of actual overhead cost, applied overhead cost, and estimated overhead cost. Overhead cost, bahasa Melayu ialah belanja ya, belanja perkilangan. So after that, you must know how to compare actual costing, normal costing, and standard costing. And the advantages of using normal costing versus actual costing. And you should able to calculate predetermined overhead rate, and you must know calculate the product cost per unit, and you must know the product cost per unit. You must know how to calculate product cost per unit. That means the content is product cost per unit, direct material, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead. Okay, after that you must clarify or calculate under applied or over applied overhead. Okay, definition of manufacturing overhead, that is the expenses incurred in the manufacturing department. So all manufacturing costs other than direct materials and direct labor costs. So overhead costs are recognized as indirect manufacturing costs. So as you know, direct material and direct labor we call direct manufacturing costs. So this is the example for manufacturing overhead. Indirect material that we use in a small quantity to produce the product, factory rent, indirect labor, factory utility, and factory insurance. Okay, this is the concept of manufacturing overhead. So this is 3 types or 3 concepts that you must know what is the meaning of manufacturing overhead. Because we have to calculate manufacturing overhead because this is the part of product cost. So there are 3 types of manufacturing overhead. So we look at the number one. Number one, actual overhead. So the amount of indirect manufacturing overhead cost actually incurred. So that means they have incurred for that period. So they should have the date. For example, 31st December 2020. So 2020 is the date, and that is the period where actual overhead had been incurred. So the example, telephone, electricity, water bill, the bill amount will only be known when we receive the bill. So when we receive the bill from telecom, from Indah Water, or from Tenaga, at the end of accounting period or at the end of period, normally at the end of the month, that one we call actual overhead ataupun belanja sebenar, ya. Okay, the next one, budgeted manufacturing overhead. Okay, budgeted manufacturing overhead is the plan, or sometimes you call schedule, and sometimes we call estimated, not incurred yet. Then it will incur in the future. So you can identify the budgeted, either planning, schedule, estimated. That one is the same meaning for manufacturing overhead, whereas actual overhead cost is still unknown. So budgeted manufacturing overhead is in the future. Normally we have to set for the beginning of the year, and we will use for the next year or in the future. Okay, this one is the budgeted manufacturing overhead, supervisor's salary, plant depreciation, and machine repair. So you can see the keyword from this sentence is budgeted manufacturing overhead. Okay, the next one. Okay, this one is the most important topic that I want to explain more detail about applied overhead. Okay, applied overhead is the amount that is added to jobs as work is complete. So job, this one refer to topic 7, job order costing. Okay, applied overhead is using the predetermined overhead. Predetermined, that means not incurred yet, but we have to estimate the overhead rate based on the actual activity. So this is the formula: predetermined overhead rate multiplied by actual activity. Okay, it relate to job order costing. So you should know a little bit about job order costing. Okay, this one is another explanation. Applied overhead. This is the formula. And when you want to calculate applied overhead, bahasa Melayunya lah, overhead diserap. That one you want to apply the overhead into the job ataupun into the cost product. So we have to use predetermined overhead in order to calculate applied overhead. So when we want to calculate applied overhead, we have to use the actual activity basis. Okay, you can see the difference between the actual overhead cost incurred and the amount of overhead applied. There will be over applied and under applied. Okay, next we will see the calculation how to get over applied and under applied. So this is the formula for applied overhead. We are using for applied overhead in the job order costing. Okay. Before that, you must know the difference. There are 3 costing systems: actual costing, normal costing, standard costing. Okay, ataupun dalam bahasa Melayunya pengekosan sebenar. Pengekosan sebenar that we want to calculate the product cost based on the actual direct material. We have to use actual direct labor and actual overhead cost. And for normal costing, you can see the difference. We still use the actual direct material, and we know already actual direct labor, but we don't know the overhead. We have to estimate the overhead, and we must use applied overhead cost. And this is the standard costing. We must use standard direct material, standard direct labor, and standard overhead cost. So this is the component that you must include in the product cost. So this one I have mentioned this component when you want to calculate the product cost in topic 2. Hopefully that you still remember. Okay, this one we are using the actual cost. So this is the product cost. Okay. Okay, this is the normal costing. What is the difference between actual costing and normal costing? The only difference is we are using applied manufacturing overhead, and I will give you one example. Okay, this is the example. Okay, this is the example that we want to relate manufacturing overhead or applied overhead with the job order costing. Okay, job order costing in Malay ialah pengekosan kerja. Okay, costs are assigned to each job or batch. Okay, this one refer to the customer. When the customer want to buy the product, one customer represent for one job. So when you want to sell the product to the customer, we have to calculate the product cost. That one we call job order costing. Okay, the important feature, each job or batch has its own distinguishing characteristic. So this one you can see there are two furniture. The first one represent for one customer. They want to order teak wood furniture for the first one. And another one is marble furniture. So this is the second customer. We have to calculate cost per job. It means that one job represent for one customer. So you have two customers. That means you have to prepare two jobs. That's why we call job order costing. Okay, this is the example where the customer they will demand for their own design. So job order costing refer to the customer order. And normally the customer order, they have their own design, they have their own characteristic. Okay, so this is the different furniture. One based on wood, teak wood, and another one based on marble. So we assume that there are two jobs where one job represents for one customer. Okay, now we have to calculate the teak wood furniture. Let's say that I just take one job that means one customer. And we have to calculate the product cost. And sometimes we call cost per job. Cost per job, that means product cost per one customer. So we know already the actual direct material. So we are using wood and the cost is 20,000. So we have complete the furniture, that one we call teak wood furniture. The cost is 20,000. So this direct material had incurred. So that one we call actual direct material, 20,000. And the second one, actual direct labor. We need direct labor to convert direct material into the finished product. So the finished product is teak wood furniture, and the cost for direct labor that had incurred at this period is 12,000. So now you want to calculate product cost per job or product cost per one customer. and you don't know the manufacturing. Why? Because we want to calculate manufacturing overhead at this period. So this period we have produced or we have complete the furniture 15 March 2021. We should calculate manufacturing at this date 15 March 2021. And if you want to use actual overhead, you have to wait at the end of the period 31st March. But we must give the customer the quotation price or the cost price. What should you do? So we have to use applied overhead, where we must estimate the overhead rate based on the actual basis. This one we call actual activity basis, because we have the value for direct material and we have the value for direct labor. So you must calculate overhead, but you don't know the amount, and you have to estimate the amount rely on or based on actual direct material, actual direct labor, or you can rely on based on the unit production. Okay, I will show later. So this is the date where we have to calculate cost per job, 15th March. And this is the date where you have complete, we are the company, we have complete the production that we call teak wood furniture. And this is the customer's order based on his design, okay? And they have their own characteristic to demand for the teak wood furniture. So you can see that costs are assigned to each job or to each batch of goods to fulfill a specific customer order. So this one is quite specific because they have their own characteristic. So this one, we are using normal costing to calculate product cost. And this product cost we call cost per job. One job represent for one customer. And we know already the actual direct material, because we want to produce the finished product, you need actual direct material. And we know already the cost of direct labor, because we need the direct labor to convert direct material into finished good. But we don't know the manufacturing overhead. But we have to estimate overhead because we want to calculate cost per job. So make sure you should know what is the meaning of normal costing. The meaning of normal costing is we must use actual direct material, actual direct labor, and we use applied overhead to calculate product cost, or in other meaning, cost per job. The next one, okay, you see what is the advantages of normal costing compared to actual costing system. And just now I mentioned normal costing system, we are using applied overhead, and actual costing system, we are using actual overhead. At this period, 15 March, we still have to wait for actual costing, actual overhead at the ending period. So the advantages using normal costing, the price of product can be determined in advance. For example, just now I give you 15 March, so you should know the product cost when you produce the finished product. So we can determine in advance. Okay, another one, the cost of the product will be remain at a certain time period for using the same overhead rate. For example, we want to estimate the overhead rate, we can use that rate for 1 year, certain time, maybe from the beginning of the period until at the end of the year. Okay, the actual costing system is for reporting purpose. But for calculating product cost, normally we use normal costing system because we still don't know the actual overhead. And we have to calculate in advance because we want to know the product cost. Okay, there are 4 steps when you want to allocate of manufacturing cost. Allocate, that means you want to to calculate the manufacturing overhead cost estimation. This one is estimation. So when you want to allocate of manufacturing overhead cost, the first step, this one based on the normal costing. Okay, you have to calculate predetermined overhead rate. Okay, normally we have to estimate in the beginning of the year. The second one, you have to calculate applied overhead. That means we have to use the predetermined overhead multiplied by the actual basis that had incurred in that period. So actual basis nanti I will explain more detail. The third step, we must calculate over applied and under applied. Okay, when you use estimated or you use applied overhead in the middle of the month, for example, 15th of March 2020, by the end of March 31st December, you will know the actual overhead. So you must compare applied that you have estimate with the actual one. The actual one is for you to see your performance, whether under or over applied overhead. And the next step, we have to make an adjustment because we want to adjust the overhead applied either under or over. Okay, nanti kita buat the calculation. Normally, we have to make an adjustment at the end of the period, depends on the day or the date, okay? Okay, this one, predetermined overhead rate, ataupun dalam bahasa Melayu, overhead pratentu. Pra, that means not incurred yet, or we have to estimate. So, predetermined overhead is calculated before the period begin. Let's say that you want to use for 2020, you must calculate in the beginning of the year. So you will use the same rate for the whole year 2020. Okay, this one cannot be assigned to specific job based on actual cost. So we cannot assign on actual cost. We must use normal costing. Okay, large companies often use a different rate for each department. And each department may have different activity basis. Okay, let's say you have the big company, there are so many departments. Maybe the first department are using machine hours. The second department, maybe you use the, the labor hours. So when you want to calculate overhead, you can use different basis. Okay, this one, the formula to calculate for predetermined overhead, we must use budgeted total manufacturing overhead. This is the budgeted, not incurred yet, but we have to estimate in the beginning of the year, divided by budgeted activity basis. Activity basis to that mean when you want to produce the product, what activity that incurred. For example, just now take furniture, just now wood furniture, we need carpenter. Carpenter is direct labor. So you can use direct labor hours or direct labor cost. That is part of activity basis. Okay, you can see this one. Predetermined overhead, you can use any activity basis. Okay, this one, based on relationship between estimated manufacturing annual overhead cost and expected annual operating activity. So manufacturing overhead cost, you want to calculate predetermined overhead rate, there is a relationship between manufacturing overhead with their active operating activity. So this is the activities that you have to choose, and it is up to the company which activity they want to use. For example, teak wood furniture, we can use direct labor hours in order to calculate predetermined overhead rate, and also you can use direct labor cost. This one represent for if you want to calculate predetermined overhead rate, you must use budgeted. But if you want to calculate applied overhead, you must use the actual basis. So you must know the difference. Yeah? Okay, direct labor cost, you can calculate predetermined overhead rate based on direct labor cost. The cost, direct labor cost, that, for example, the carpenter. So you have to pay the salary to the carpenter. So that one we call direct labor cost. Or you can use machine hours when you want to calculate predetermined overhead rate. Machine hours, that means we are using the machine to produce thick wood furniture. So you can calculate predetermined overhead rate based on machine. Or direct material cost. We are using wood, thick wood. Thick wood ni kayu jati. So the cost of direct material, we can calculate predetermined overhead rate because the overhead we cannot see physically. Okay, but this cost you can see physically. That's why you have to calculate overhead rate based on this basis. Or production unit, how many unit that you produce for thick wood furniture. Is that
Okay,
for time?
Madam Yati.
Alright.
Okay, we take a break for a while. Okay, student, please stay tuned.
Alah, apa ni? PKPB lagi. SPM pula ditangguhkan. Jenuhlah nak bayar yuran tuition. Pernah dengar tentang tuition percuma? Kami di Akademi YouTuber menyediakan tuition online secara percuma kepada anda semua. Ada prasekolah, sekolah rendah, sekolah menengah, STPM, juga untuk matrikulasi. Percuma je. Jom layari laman sesawang www.academyyoutuber.com.
Okay, Madam Yati. Okay, kita sambung sekarang. Okay, terima kasih.
Okay, thank you, Madam Fizi. Okay, now kita calculate. This one is the formula to calculate applied. Just now I have mentioned applied overhead. You have to use the actual basis multiply by predetermined overhead rate. Then you got the applied overhead. Bahasa Melayunya lah overhead disrupt. This is the amount that you have to calculate for job order costing. Okay, I give you one example. You are given in the question. The company manufactured thick wood furniture at the beginning of 2020, and this is the budgeted for the information. The first one budgeted MO 500,000 and budgeted machine hour 200,000 hours, direct labor hours 100,000 hours, direct labor cost RM 650,000, raw material cost RM 450,000, production unit. So this one is all is the basis. So the company has 5 options to calculate predetermined overhead rate in order to charge manufacturing overhead to customers' job. So they can choose any basis. So in the question, you are required to calculate the predetermined overhead rate based on the following activities: machine hours, direct labor hours, direct labor cost, direct material cost, and production unit. So you have to calculate the POR or predetermined overhead rate. So this is the formula: total budgeted, total manufacturing overhead divided budgeted. So you must see this one: budgeted divided budgeted activity. The activity with basis is machine hours. So 500,000 divided by 200,000 and you get RM 250 per machine hour. So this is the first choice if you use machine hours for predetermined overhead. And the second one, if you want to use direct labor hours, the formula is budgeted manufacturing overhead divided by budgeted activity basis, that is direct labor hours. In the question given, 500,000 represent for budgeted MO divided by 100,000 represent for budgeted direct labor hours. So you got 5.5 ringgit per direct labor hours. So this is the second alternative if you want to calculate POR or predetermined overhead rate. And the third one, you can use direct labor cost. So the formula is budgeted 500,000 divided budgeted direct labor cost. So this one, the upper is RM, the lower is RM. So you have to convert into percentage. And you got the answer. And you must write down 2 decimal point, 76.92%. So this is another basis that you want to calculate, POR or POR. And the last one, this one, the number 4, direct material cost. Budgeted MO divided by budgeted direct material cost. 450,000. So RM upper divided by RM below or lower. So you have to convert into percentage. So you got 111%. And the last one, the company also can use production unit for predetermined overhead rate. So 500,000 budgeted MO divided by 75,000 unit budgeted production unit, then you get the answer, RM 6.67 ringgit per unit. So that one is how to calculate predetermined overhead rate. And the next one, you must calculate under applied and over applied. You have to compare the actual overhead with the applied overhead, because you will know actual overhead at the end of the period. Whereas applied overhead, you have to calculate when your job complete or when your production complete, and you have to calculate cost for your customer. Okay, this one, when you calculate, you can see when applied overhead is bigger than actual overhead, we call over applied overhead. And when applied overhead is smaller than actual overhead, that one we call under applied overhead. Okay, I will show you how to get that amount. Okay, the next step, there are 4 steps. The first one, you have to calculate predetermined overhead. The second one, you have to calculate applied overhead. The third one, you have to compare over and under. And this is the last one, you have to prepare the journal entry. So this is the journal entry where you are using the cost of goods sold. For example, over applied, that means you have record overhead applied is more than actual overhead. What should you do? You must credit cost of goods sold. So debit manufacturing overhead, because you have record applied is over than actual overhead. If you record under applied overhead, so that means your applied overhead ataupun estimated overhead is less than actual overhead. What should you do? You have to add or debit cost of goods sold and credit manufacturing overhead. You just focus for cost of goods sold. Over, it means that you have to credit cost of goods sold, and under applied, you must debit cost of goods sold, and its partner is manufacturing overhead. And this is the example for manufacturing overhead, where I will give you the example where you have to calculate POR ataupun predetermined overhead, and the second one applied overhead, the third one you have to calculate over and under, and the last one, the fourth step, you have to prepare the journal entry. Okay, this is the amount for activity basis. So the company choose, there are 3 bases. That means you produce the product and you can see that there is direct labor cost, direct labor hours, and machine hours. They provide for the activity basis. And this is the budgeted amount. Because you want to calculate POR, you must use budgeted MO divided by budgeted activity basis. And this actual amount, you want to calculate applied overhead. Okay, now This is the budgeted MO 1,200,000 and this one is the actual MO 1,180,000. So you are required to calculate determine overhead rate. This is the first step based on that 3 activity basis. The second one, you have to calculate applied overhead. The third one, over or under applied. And the last one, you have to prepare the journal entry. Okay, now, you have to calculate for or predetermined overhead. The formula is budgeted manufacturing overhead divided by budgeted direct labor cost. Okay, you must record in terms of percentage. So you got 60%. So you must remember budgeted MO manufacturing overhead divided by budgeted direct labor cost. So this is predetermined overhead. Okay, the second one, you can use any basis. So you are provided 3 basis. So you can use 3 basis and you can choose any one. Okay, the direct labor hours, budgeted manufacturing overhead given the question 1,200,000 divided by budgeted direct labor hours and you got RM 6 per hours. And the last one, budgeted MO divided by budgeted machine hours and you got RM 6 per hours. So this is predetermined overhead and you have to calculate applied overhead based on their basis. This is the answer. You have calculate predetermined overhead multiplied by actual direct labor cost given in the question. Actual direct labor cost. So you will get answer for applied manufacturing overhead 1,260,000. So you must know the formula. We are using applied manufacturing overhead where we are using predetermined overhead multiplied by actual direct labor cost. The second one, predetermined overhead multiplied by actual direct labor hours because these hours had incurred and you want to estimate the applied overhead. So you get 1,267,300 ringgit for direct labor hours. And the last one, machine hours. Just now you have calculated predetermined overhead multiplied by actual machine hours. So you must remember we are using actual basis in order to get applied overhead because you have already the actual direct labor, actual direct material, you have already, but you don't know the manufacturing overhead. We are using applied manufacturing overhead. So you got the answer, RM 1,152,000. So this is the second step. The third step, you have to calculate over applied or under applied manufacturing overhead. The first step, you have to prepare the table. And this is the list for basis. And the second column, applied overhead that you have calculated just now. The third column, you must record for your actual overhead. And you have to compare applied overhead with actual overhead. And you get the answer over or under applied. For example, direct labor cost. You can see applied overhead is greater than actual overhead. So you must find the difference between this and you find out the applied overhead is it's greater than actual. So that one we call over applied. 80,000, you find the difference between actual and applied. The second one, applied overhead is greater than actual overhead. So that one, we have calculate the estimated is bigger than the actual. That one we call over applied. RM 87,300. So you can see that this different amount represent for applied over applied. And machine hour, we find out that applied overhead is smaller than the actual one. The actual is 1,180,000, and the estimated using applied only 1,152,000. That one we call under applied overhead, and the different amount is 28,000. What should you do with over applied and under applied? We have to make an adjustment to ensure that the amount must equal to actual overhead. And when you want to make an adjustment at the end of period, for example, over applied direct labor costs, what should you do? Okay, you have to deduct cost of goods sold, credit 80,000, because you have record applied overhead more than actual overhead. So you have to make an adjustment by credit cost of goods sold 80,000. Number two, you have to, this one over applied, you have to record cost of goods sold in the credit side, or you have to deduct cost of goods sold because the applied is greater than actual one. You have to make an adjustment so that applied overhead should be equal to actual overhead. And the third one, under applied. That means we have record under applied overhead is smaller than actual overhead. So you must make them equal. What should you do? You have to debit cost of goods sold. The amount different is 28,000. So depends on the sentence. Over applied, that means you have to credit cost of goods sold. Under applied, that means you have to debit. In the journal entry, you have to debit cost of goods sold. So that one is the fourth step. Finished already for manufacturing overhead. So hopefully that you can understand there are 4 steps. Number 1, you have to calculate predetermined overhead. Number 2, you have to calculate applied overhead. Number 3, you have to calculate over applied or under applied. And the last one, you have to make an adjustment so that applied overhead should equal to actual overhead. Okay, this one is the question. You are given in the question, Robert Company provide the following information for the record 2020. Okay, this is the estimation production, 60,000 labor hours. So do you see labor hours? This one is actual production, 56,000 labor hours. So that means the product based on labor hours. And this is budgeted overhead, and this one is actual overhead. How much is the overhead application rate? Okay, that one refer to predetermined overhead rate. If Robert Company bases it on direct labor hours. So that means you have to calculate predetermined overhead based on direct labor hours. So this is quiz. I open to all the students to give the answer. So you can see the keyword. You should know the formula for predetermined overhead equals to budgeted manufacturing overhead. You are given 2 items, one budgeted and another one actual, divided by budgeted activity basis. So any of you, can you calculate now and give me the correct answer? A, 30 per labor hour. B, 29 ringgit per labor hour. C, 32.14 per labor hour. And D, 31.07 cent per labor hour. Okay, I'm waiting from the student to give the answer.
Okey, mana-mana pelajar yang ingin menjawab, cubalah jawab dan boleh tuliskan jawapan anda pada ruangan chat. Okey, cikgu bagi masa beberapa saat, less than 1 minute. Okey, try to answer the question.
Okay, that one you just should know the formula. The formula for predetermined overhead. In the question, they are given one for budgeted and one for actual. One for budgeted manufacturing overhead and another one for actual manufacturing overhead. Okay, I'm waiting for
Okay.
you.
Dah ada jawapan daripada tadi, sebelum tadi tak tahu macam mana nak pronounce nama dia ni. Dia jawab C. Anis Zaki jawab C.
See, that means 332.14 per labor hour. Okay, any of you?
Okay, ada lagi yang jawab C. Kau Zio Yu jawab C. Okay, siapa lagi nak jawab boleh tulis di ruangan chat. Okay, we are waiting.
So the formula is budgeted MO manufacturing overhead divided budgeted labor hours. Budgeted or estimated is the same meaning. So maybe you are confusing because you look at that one estimated. That one estimated or budgeted is the same meaning. Okay. Any more? No more?
Okay, ada lagi seorang. Nur Hasanah Haspiruddin jawab A.
Okay, Hasanah.
SWFS the triple M ni pun jawab A. Okay, ada lagi. Aina Syahirah jawab A. Haziq Zawawi jawab A. Syahidah Syahmizan pun jawab A.
Alright, that is the correct answer. So the correct answer is A. RM30 per labor hour. So I will show you the working. Yes, the answer is 30. So you must use the budgeted overhead 1,800,000 divided by 60,000 hours. 60,000 hours is for direct labor hours. So budgeted divided by budgeted and you got the answer RM30 per labor hours. Okay, the next one. Actually, we are still using the same formula when you want to calculate. Okay, this one, the second one. Lily Manufacturing provide the following information for 2021. This is the same method. 60 estimated production based on 60,000 labor hours. Actual production 56,000 labor hours. Budgeted overhead, that means budgeted manufacturing overhead is 900,000 and actual manufacturing overhead is RM 870,000. You are required to calculate overhead application rate. That one is another word for predetermined overhead because you are calculate applied overhead but you are using the predetermined overhead rate. So what is the answer for predetermined overhead rate based on direct labor hours? Any question?
Okay. Sila calculate. Ya, sila calculate. Okay, nampaknya dah ada jawapan. Daripada Haziq Zawawi. Jawapan dia B. Syahidah Syahmizan pun jawab B.
Okay.
SWF tadi pun jawab B. Afikah Nabilah B. Muaz Amirul B.
Okay. That is correct
Nabilah
answer.
B.
Alright. That is correct.
Puan B also B.
Alright. So the correct answer is B. Very good. Congratulations to all of you. So I will show you the working. So the answer is you must use budgeted MO 900,000 divided by budgeted direct labor hours 60,000. So your answer is 15 per labor hours. So this one is the question to all. You still have about 5 minutes. Okay, this one is the last question. Actually, we are using the same formula. Okay, calculate predetermined overhead based on machine. Just now, based on direct labor hours. Now we are using machine hours to calculate predetermined overhead. So you are given actual and estimated for MO. Now you are given actual and estimated machine hours. So what is the answer for predetermined overhead?
Okey.
Any,
Apa jawapan dia ya? Kita tunggu.
Okay, come on. This one is very easy. You are given only 4 data only. From that one, you just choose the correct either estimated or
Okey, dah
actual.
ada. Dah ada jawapan dah. Muaz Amirul jawab A. Aina Syahirah jawab A. Syahidah Syah Mizan jawab A. Afiqah Nabilah A. Haziq Zawawi A. SWFS Triple M ni pun jawab A.
Okay, that is correct. Betul,
Rauf pun jawab
bagus.
A.
Alright.
Good.
Betul. And this is the working. You just use the estimated or budgeted. Estimated or budgeted is the same meaning, divided by budgeted machine hours. So you are applying predetermined overhead RM10 per machine hour. Okay, I think that is enough for today. Okay. Last one lah. Okay ni. Yang ni, you use that amount for just now predetermined overhead to calculate applied overhead. We are using the same question. Just now, you use this data to calculate predetermined overhead. Now, can you calculate applied overhead? Just now, you used predetermined overhead to calculate applied overhead. And you must know the formula. Applied overhead equals to predetermined overhead multiplied by actual machine hours. Okay, this is the second step. You have to calculate applied overhead. So this is the last question. Okay, come on. Any of you want to give the answer? And make sure you use predetermined overhead just now. Number 3 just now, quiz number 3. You use that data to calculate applied overhead. Any of you can remember how to calculate applied overhead? Tak ada.
Okay, if there is any answer, write at the chat column. Okay, we are waiting.
Oh, dia ada 2 jawapan dekat sini betul sama.
Okay, Syasha Akilah jawab A. Iwan Yi jawab A. Aina Syahirah A. Farha Sufiah A. Izzatul Ifah A. Muaz Amirul A. Haziq Zawawi A. Syahidah Syah Mizan A. SW ni Triple M tu A.
Okay, betul. Yes, dia jawapan dia A atau C sebab
Ada seorang jawab A and C.
betul
ada seorang
tu.
jawab A and C sebab jawapan sama kan.
Betul. Itu typing error sebenarnya. Okay, that is correct. Betul lah tu, A and C. Alright, habis. So this is the working. RM10 darab dengan actual basis machine 295. So you got the answer. Okay, that's all for today and for tonight. So saya kembalikan semula kepada moderator. Thank you.
Okey, terima kasih diucapkan kepada Cikgu Yati atas perkongsian ilmu yang sangat bermanfaat tadi, mudah difahami dan sangat menarik. Alhamdulillah dah selesai kelas kita pada malam ini. Tahniah juga diucapkan kepada semua yang setia mengikuti kelas pada malam ini dari awal sehinggalah ke saat ini. Okey, sebelum kita tamatkan sesi siaran langsung ini, mohon tutup ruangan chat dan klik butang subscribe yang masih merah tu dan aktifkan ikon loceng supaya kamu tidak terlepas sesi kelas yang seterusnya. Sekiranya anda suka dengan apa yang dipelajari hari ini, sila klik like and share kepada rakan-rakan di media sosial untuk sebarkan ilmu dan beroleh kebaikan melalui perkongsian tersebut. Sila type dan di ruangan komen. Sebelum link sijil akan diberikan sebagai tanda terima kasih daripada kami kerana kehebatan kamu menyertai kelas tuisyen percuma pada malam ini. Okey, link sijil boleh didapatkan pada bahagian chat. Okey, sila ambil perhatian. Link tersebut akan tamat dalam tempoh setengah jam selepas live ini. Pastikan anda guna email e-didik sahaja. Okey, sekali lagi saya ucapkan ribuan terima kasih kepada Cikgu Yati atas kelas malam ini. Sebelum saya tamatkan kelas pada malam ini, dipersilakan ahli konti atau studio untuk berikan sepatah dua kata. Okey, saya persilakan dahulu Cikgu Faizah.
Okay, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, first of all, tahniah kepada semua pelajar yang take part malam ini. Okay, because explanation Teacher Yati is very jelas, okay, terang and teacher yang walaupun pensyarah biologi still can understand. Okay, previously Cikgu Yati ada share tentang chicken chop. So malam ni Cikgu Yati teacher pula my favorite furniture, the teak wood furniture. Okay, so a very interesting topic manufacturing overhead. Okay, so thank you Cikgu Yati and all the students stay tuned and subscribe channel Cikgu Yati. Okay, thank you.
Okey, terima kasih Cikgu Faizah. Okey, seterusnya saya persilakan Cikgu Naini untuk memberikan sepatah dua kata. Okey, dipersila.
Okey, Assalamualaikum dan selamat malam. Okey, daripada penyampaian Cikgu Yati tadi sangat menarik. Okey, mudah difahami dan Cikgu pun boleh belajar pada malam ini tentang akaun. Okey, jadi Cikgu harap anda semua akan terus join channel Cikgu Yati. Okey, boleh subscribe tu Cikgu Yati dan harap akan terus bersama mengikuti tuisyen matrikulasi Perakaunan. Okey.
Okey, terima kasih Cikgu Naini. Okey, so jangan lupa untuk dapatkan jadual tuisyen online terkini melalui portal www.academyyoutuber.com serta dapatkan info terkini. So bantu kami untuk sebarkan kelas tuisyen percuma ini kepada rakan-rakan dan guru-guru seluruh Malaysia. Semoga kita mendapat manfaat daripada kelas-kelas yang dijalankan. Ingat hashtag bermula percuma, selamanya percuma, insya-Allah. Okey, so terima kasih kepada semua. Segala yang baik itu datangnya daripada Allah. Jika terdapat sebarang kekurangan dan kelemahan, itu adalah daripada kami. So, kelas tuisyen online percuma berakhir sudah. Di lain siaran, pada waktu yang sama, hari yang sama, insya-Allah kita akan berjumpa lagi minggu hadapan. Okey, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okey, bye. Terima kasih.
Bye.
Berikutan pengumuman penutupan sekolah sehingga akhir persekolahan. Pengajaran dan pembelajaran secara home-based learning tetap diteruskan. Oleh itu, kami di Akademi YouTuber menyediakan tuisyen online percuma pertama di Malaysia dari prasekolah hinggalah ke sekolah menengah dengan kerjasama e-didik Malaysia dan Kelab Guru Malaysia. Kenapa bayar jika anda boleh dapat percuma? Bermula percuma, selamanya akan percuma. Manfaatkan peluang yang ada. Jangan tunggu lagi, sertailah sekarang. Untuk maklumat lanjut, layari www.academyyoutuber.com.
Dibawakan kepada anda oleh Akademi YouTuber.